Everyone, we'll go ahead and get started. This is a City Council regular meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 4th, 2022. It is 5:36 p.m. and we are currently at the City Hall Building, 100 South Monroe Street in Eagle Pass, Maverick County, Texas. We will start with the establishment of quorum. We do have a quorum today with Mayor Pro Tem Ramon, Councilwoman Cruz, and myself, Mayor Salinas. As of right now, we have absent Councilman Davis and Councilman Diaz. So we will move on to a moment of reverence. As many of you know, today there was a tragic event where a National Guardsman lost his life. We still don't know the exact details, but we want to have a moment of reverence for his family, his fellow guardsmen, and his friends. So if we can please take a second. Thank you. Citizens' communications and recognitions.
There was no citizens' communication submitted, Mayor.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to a very important presentation that we have today, and it's a presentation of a proclamation for Fire Prevention Week. So I'll invite council. Can we go up front here? Special day today. We want to recognize, first of all, these gentlemen right here and ladies. I believe we have our female employees of the fire departments. Thank you so much for all the work that you do in taking care of Eagle Pass, preventing fires, looking out for us whenever disasters happen. There's never enough words to say how much we appreciate you all being here and protecting us. So we're just very grateful. And it is a Fire Prevention Week. We want to make sure that the community knows that it's very important that we do our part in making sure that we prevent fires, we prevent the loss of life, we prevent injuries. And with that said, we would like to read and present a proclamation. And it reads as follows. Whereas the city of Eagle Pass is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living and visiting our city. And whereas fire is a serious public safety concern, both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at greatest risk from fire. And whereas roughly 2/3 of home fire deaths resulted from fires in which no smoke alarms or no working smoke alarms were present. And whereas smoke alarms send smoke well before you can, alerting you of the danger in the event of fire in which you may have as little as 2 minutes to escape safely. And whereas residents should be sure everyone in the home understands the sounds of the alarms and knows how to respond. And whereas residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire. And whereas the City of Eagle Pass first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education. And whereas the City of Eagle Pass residents are responsive to public education measures and are better able to take personal steps to increase their safety from fire, especially in their homes. And whereas this year is a 100th anniversary of Fire Prevention Week, and the 2022 fire prevention theme for this period is Fire Won't Wait, Plan Your Escape. Now therefore I, Rolando Salinas, Mayor of the City of Eagle Pass, Texas, do hereby proclaim October 9th through the 15th of 2022 as Fire Prevention Week in the City of Eagle Pass, and I encourage all residents to protect their homes and families by heeding the potentially life-saving messages of Fire Prevention Week 2022 and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of the Eagle Pass Fire Department. I, witness hereunto, set my hand with the seal of the City of Eagle Pass on this 4th day of October 2022. Thank you, gentlemen. I would like to invite our fire marshal, Mr. Cuevas, if you want to say some words on the importance of fire prevention.
Sure. I mean, I'd like to thank everybody here. I mean, if it wasn't for everybody here, we wouldn't have fire prevention. Our firefighters, Lieutenant Federico Salinas was in charge of getting all the schools ready for Fire Prevention Week, all the presentations, everything. We wouldn't be here. I'd like to invite the community to, if they have any type of presentations, they're requesting any type of presentations, give us a call. We're more than glad to go to your building and even households, schools, anywhere, and we'll provide that service for you. And thank you for everything.
So, Mr. Cuevas, the education, it starts when you're little, right?
Yes, we start from, actually today we had a daycare go to our station. So they start from 2-year-old all the way to, we actually go all the way to high school to do fire prevention and career day as well. So we help out.
And we recommend families to make sure the kids know what to do.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you, gentlemen, for everything. Chief, would you like to say some more?
Yes, one thing that he didn't add was this past year, they installed hundreds of smoke alarms around the city, especially to the most impoverished areas of Eagle Pass. So there's several houses now with smoke alarms, and it's all because of their hard work. Fire prevention is not a month-long thing, it's a year-long thing. They work all year long on fire prevention. Every year, hundreds of thousands of houses throughout the United States are damaged by fire. And not to mention the devastation and tragedy of human lives that are lost. Citizens as well as firefighters trying to fight fires. Fire prevention also, like the mayor mentioned, it starts from the very beginning, from elementary, kindergarten. All of those children, they actually take that knowledge home and teach their parents. So that's where we try to teach each and every one of those children exactly what they need to do to prevent themselves from getting hurt or worse in a fire. It is one of our biggest events in the fire department. We get hundreds of kids that go visit the fire department, and they reach out to over 3,000 kids a year, not to mention the adult daycares and other childhood daycares. So they got their work cut out for them, and that includes all of these guys right here in the back that participate in fire prevention.
Chief, if anybody in the community needs help with like smoke alarms, can they call the fire department?
Of course, we'll be glad to help them out. That's what we've been doing throughout the year, and if anybody needs assistance in that, we're here to help.
Perfect. What number can they call?
830-757-4231. Don't call 911.
Perfect. Because I know there's a lot of like elderly people that they just need help with.
Yes, and
the
we'll
batteries.
Yeah,
and
we
we'll be putting
have
our
one lady that calls us every year to check her.
That's awesome.
So we go there,
That's
we
awesome.
buy batteries. We installed a new smoke alarm this past year, which we're gonna start doing this again in March for this coming year. We're gonna start that program.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so proud to be
Thank you.
protected by you also. Thank you.
Thank
And if we can take a photograph with the group, I don't know, maybe we should go down there. Así salen, yeah. Sí,
Come to the front, you want to get out.
We're good. We got you. Now we have to wait.
So because they came in late, they can start.
We're
with the
waiting,
speech.
gentlemen. You have any words? Thank you.
Thank you.
I was taking my son to get his driver's permit. So,
Yeah. Uh-oh.
And present, we do have Councilman Davis. You need the time?
Yes, please.
5:48. Well, thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 2. Yes, no, we got it, yes. We got it. Just set my computer here. Item 2, public hearings. Public hearing on the proposed final replat of Lot 105 in Chula Vista Subdivision Unit 2, including 1, a subdivision variance from the preliminary plat requirement as required by the City of Eagle Pass Code of Ordinances, Chapter 23, Section 23-36A, and 2, a variance to reduce the required lot width of 55 feet to 49.53 feet. Closing of public hearing and possible action. We will open the public hearing at 5:49 p.m.
Thank you, Mayor.
Hello,
Hello.
good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So what you have before you is a replat application submitted by Dirksen Engineering, who is seeking to subdivide Lot 105 into 2 residential lots. A residence exists on the north half and it is desired to construct a second home on the south half. The replat is actually required to obtain an additional service in order to construct the additional home, which is, this is a site here, aerial map. The applicant has submitted water and sewer 30-year agreements those have been approved and executed by the Water
Right.
Board. Fire protection is also in compliance per city and fire code. This is a plot here. As you can see, there's an existing structure, residence, and this is a lot that's being proposed for an additional construction. The drainage here is not significant, so therefore no additional storm development is required. We did send out 66 notices to the abutting property owners, and we received 5 as undeliverable.
Anybody against?
No, Mayor. Here you have the executed water agreements, sewer and water agreements, fire flow test, compliant fire flow test, and the recommendation is to approve the application as presented by the Planning and Zoning Commission and
Okay.
Planning Department.
Since this is a public hearing, do we have anyone in the audience that has any comments, concerns regarding this public hearing? Any comments from council?
What are gonna be the dimensions of the lots once they're subdivided?
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot, I left out, we do have a variance, which we are recommending approval. It is required a 55 feet width. They're reducing it to 49.53.
It is also my understanding that they were like that in the beginning in 1985 as describing
That's
in the
correct.
document, so it's not something that
That's correct.
differs
Out of the
much.
ordinary.
So yes.
Because it has two property IDs, is what I noticed.
Yes, well,
Right.
it was
Right.
initially already subdivided by, illegally subdivided.
Okay.
And so now they're coming forth
To make it right.
To make it.
to make it right.
Okay, which we encourage. So any other comments?
No.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 5:52 PM. And now that the public hearing is closed, I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
We have a motion to approve, I'm assuming, the recommendation
Yes.
by Mayor Pro Tem Ramon,
approve as recommended, I'm sorry, yes.
and a second by Councilwoman Cruz. Discussion, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Item 3, public hearing on the proposed final replat of Lot 9 and Block 2 of Loma Linda Subdivision Unit 3, including 1, a subdivision variance from the preliminary plat requirement as required by the City of Eagle Pass Code of Ordinances, Chapter 23, Section 23-36A. 2, a sidewalk waiver from the requirement to construct a sidewalk adjacent to Wagon Wheel Road, La Grande Drive, and Linda Vista Drive. And 3, a subdivision variance from the requirement to construct a concrete curb and gutter along the property street frontage abutting Wagon Wheel Road, La Grande Drive, and Linda Vista Drive. Closing a public hearing and possible action. We will open this public hearing at 5:53 PM.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
So this here is another replat submitted by Dirksen Engineering. What, actually, the lot is vacant. They're seeking to subdivide to add an additional service as well.
How many services does this lot have?
Currently, it has one service only, so they're seeking to subdivide to gain that other additional service
Okay.
for construction purposes as well. The lot is comply with fire flow codes. Property is located again in Loma Linda subdivision out in the county, which is in our 5-mile ETJ. And they're seeking to, like you mentioned, a sidewalk waiver from the requirement to construct a sidewalk adjacent to Wagon Wheel Road, La Grande Drive, and Linda Vista Drive. A variance to proceed directly to final without going through the preliminary replat approval, and a variance from the requirement to construct curb and gutter. The site is, like I mentioned, off of Wagon Wheel Road. You can see an aerial map here. This is the a zoomed in image of the plat. And what you have here, if you can see, there's a, well, it's not very legible, but we do have an easement going across this lot here, which is going to be maintained by the property owner. It's going to remain as a private easement.
So right now, it's one lot, but they want to subdivide it into
Yes.
two, which is,
For this here, we did send out 52 notices, and we received 3 as undeliverable. Again, it's serviced. They gained the 30-year water and sewer agreements, compliant fire flow test. And so the planning department recommends to grant the sidewalk waiver, grant the variance request to proceed directly to final, and grant the variance from the requirement to construct curb and gutter. And finally, to approve the final replat approval of Lot 9, Block 20 in Loma Linda Subdivision, Unit 3.
okay. We will start with the public. If anyone in the public has any comments regarding this public hearing, please do so now. If we don't have any comments from the public, council, any questions or concerns? The only question I have is, the other properties, they don't have sidewalks either, right? Like, close to there?
No,
So that's why it makes sense?
yes, that's
Okay.
the reason why.
All right, with that said, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 5:56 PM. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion. We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Ramon,
I'll second.
second by Councilwoman Cruz. Discussion, all in favor? Unanimous. Item 4, public hearing on the proposed final replat of Lot 13 in Block 8 of Deer Run Subdivision Unit 2, including 1, a subdivision variance from the preliminary plat requirement as required by the City of Eagle Pass Code of Ordinances, Chapter 23, Section 23-36A, and 2, a sidewalk waiver from the requirement to construct a sidewalk adjacent to Doe Lane and El Venado Drive. Closing of public hearing and possible action. We will open this public hearing at 5:57 PM.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, another replat application submitted by Dirksen Engineering. Applicant is seeking to subdivide Lot 13 as a residence. As you can see, a residence already exists on the subject lot. They're seeking to subdivide it to add an additional construction and obtain an additional service, water and sewer service. Property is located off of Doe Lane in Deer Run subdivision. They have been granted water and sewer services. We do have on file the 30-year agreements. Fire flow as well is compliant per city and fire codes. Here you have an aerial map of the site. You can see that's the existing residence. And this is the other portion that's vacant, where they're seeking to construct. Here you have the plat drawing and a zoomed in screen image of the plat. We did send out 63 notices to the abutting property owners, and we received 6 letters as undeliverable. So the recommendation is that the sidewalk be granted. Also grant the variance to proceed directly to final plat, and grant final approval of the replat of Lot 13 in Block 8 of Deer Run Subdivision Unit 2. Any questions?
On this one,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
On this one, on the pictures, I see that we have paved streets. Is there a reason why we are waiving, in this case, the gutters and the sidewalks? It's just that this part is what, it's always a concern of mine. I understand when it's not paved, that we have no other option,
I think it's just a sidewalk.
but in
not the
this way,
gutter.
in this part,
It's just the sidewalk
Just
that
the
they're
sidewalk.
asking for a waiver.
Because no one else has a sidewalk in that area.
No one
That
else.
area.
We did talk, or the county did supplies with the recommendation, and they're recommending that the sidewalk be granted, sidewalk waiver be granted.
yeah, that's my only concern, that in the future, we're gonna end up with so many sidewalks pending, and it's gonna just keep, I mean, where to stop, that's the only, but it makes sense. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you.
Any questions, concerns from the public? I just wanna say that it's good to see so many people that wanna actually do construction.
Yeah.
It helps the economy, it helps the housing, the need for housing in our community, so that's good.
Yes.
Okay, so,
It's a good sized lot.
yes, if we have no further comments, we'll close the public hearing at 6 PM. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the recommendations.
I'll make a motion to, oh, I'm sorry.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Cruz and a second by Councilman Davis. Discussion, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
We'll move on to the consent agenda items. We have 3 items on the consent agenda. At this time, I'll ask council if anybody wants to remove one of these items and discuss it individually, please do so now. Okay, if not, I'll go ahead and read the items. Item 5, approval of the minutes of the September 6, 22 meeting. Item 6, second reading of an ordinance amending section 2-30 by adding new subsection Q, Article 2, Chapter 2, Administration of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Eagle Pass to add an additional leave benefit. Finding that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law, providing a severability clause and establishing an effective date. And item 7, consideration and possible approval of a resolution relating to the adoption of the annual tax roll of the year 2022 by the City of Eagle Pass. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve these items.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Ramon,
Second.
second by Councilman Davis, and it's a consent agenda, so everyone approves unanimous. Moving on to our monthly reports. I'm gonna go ahead and read them. As always, just let me know if you have any questions on any department. We have most of the directors here. We'll start with the bridge. I have a question for Homero. Mr. Valderas. There's a lot of things going on with the bridge, the pedestrian traffic, right, is in Bridge 1 already?
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor, good afternoon, Council. Yes, that's correct, Mayor. At the moment, we do have the ongoing construction of our Bridge 2 Administration Building, and because of that, there is a safety concern with the pedestrians accessing our Bridge number 2 to cross it to Mexico. So in a meeting that we had with CBP and the Aduana for Mexico, we agreed that it was in the best interest of our pedestrians to shift all southbound pedestrian traffic to our Bridge number 1. Which we've been doing so for the past 2 months since the construction began. We have been putting out notices and put up signage at the Port of Eagle Pass sign on Ward Street to inform the pedestrians not to go all the way up to Bridge 2 and ensure that they cross through Bridge number 1. Another thing that we actually did is we actually extended the hours for southbound to 24 hours at Bridge number 1 so that our pedestrians can still get to Mexico, and about 90% of them still choose to cross through Bridge number 1. It was when we closed that we saw pedestrians actually go to Bridge number 2. So we, like I said, we're trying to educate our pedestrians that as long as the construction is ongoing, we don't want to put them in harm's way with the machinery and the ongoing construction there at Bridge number 2.
So once again, for pedestrians only, Bridge number 1, 24 hours.
24 hours southbound into Mexico.
Okay.
Okay. The construction of the new offices, how long is that gonna take?
Right now,
Approximately.
the construction began in August, and the expected construction time is about 15 months. So we're considering the final construction about around this time next year, a couple of months. As far as the pedestrians is concerned, right now, it's because the construction of the building is ongoing and it's right next to the sidewalk. So we feel once the building's constructed, we may be able to continue to provide service to the pedestrians.
Okay.
But we're hopeful that by the end of next year, we have a fully constructed new administration building and a new improved parking lot for our customers and our staff.
Very much needed. Looking forward to that day. Okay.
And there was a new fee, just so that the public, just to remind the public about the 50 cent increase?
Yes, so obviously October 1st, the City Council approved 2 years ago that effective October 1, 2022, the fee for the express card would go up to $4. I know it seems like an increase, but initially what was implemented for the express card was a savings of 50 cents to promote the customers in obtaining this express card. So at this point, we've determined that we have sufficient cardholders to where we can remove the fee and continue to support the new customers that want it and the existing ones.
And you get the benefit that it's way faster, right?
Correct. So right now, as y'all probably know, we have the express lane at our Bridge number 1. Our customers love the fact that they can access the toll plaza so quickly. And the future projects that we have for our Bridge number 2 will also provide that incentive. So that's our goal, is the incentive for the express card or the toll tag that's soon to come is going to be that quick access to the toll plaza and quick crossing into Mexico.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Economic development. Arturo, can you give us an update on, you're working on so many projects, just a little synopsis. You know, let's start with the Riskins building.
Sure,
'cause-
yeah, there's definitely a lot to talk about.
Yes, we've been, the incubator, what's, we
Yeah.
need to move that along.
No, definitely, there's definitely a lot of questions, you know, we are working on quite a plethora of projects, some of them which you guys will see tonight, we actually do have a few, more than a handful of items for you guys, tonight. As far as the Riskins building, the incubator itself, we are now in the phase of searching or seeking out the general contractor. The deadline to submit any bids for any general contractor that's watching here tonight, it has been extended to the last week of October. So if anybody's interested, the designs, the construction documents are completed. You know, the design is completed, so we're expecting to begin construction after, of course, we're able to choose the general contractor. Like I said, if you guys have any specific questions, please feel free to ask.
That's a question I had on the incubator, so you answered it.
Okay, cool.
Anybody else? Okay.
Yeah, we have a few items.
Yeah, we have a few
back
items,
here.
so
We'll be
we'll
back.
come back to you. Thank you.
Thank
Engineering. Mr. McGee, we're good. I just wanted to say hello. We're good.
Hello.
Everything good with engineering?
Yes, so we got several projects that we're trying to keep an eye on, working with some of the other departments on getting new projects off the road, and we got
Awesome.
several studies, especially with drainage going on, so if you have one in particular you'd like to discuss, I'm available.
The only thing that I saw is there on Del Rio Boulevard, there was some businesses that had a sidewalk, and then I saw that they were tearing it again.
On Del Rio Boulevard?
On Del Rio Boulevard, that new plaza of businesses.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, as you're coming, I guess, coming towards town on the left-hand side?
Yes,
Yeah, that was, I forget the name of the development, but they had a problem with the driveway,
okay,
and it was too steep. You actually really could see it when you were on their property.
okay.
So it was too steep, so they needed to redo that, and to do that, they had to cut into the property. We worked that out. We tried to meet with TxDOT to give them another driveway, so they wouldn't have to do that. And TxDOT wasn't agreeable to give them another driveway, so they had to fix that one because it's required by our fire code.
Excellent, yeah,
Yes.
that's the question I had regarding
Yes.
that project.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Finance, thank you, Mr. McGee. Finance grants. Fire. Government relations. We do have our lobbyist, Mr. Mark Rodriguez. You wanna?
Presentation?
Yes. Did you have a short presentation for us?
No, Mayor, just a quick report that,
Please.
that the acting manager and I have already begun working. We're early this session, believe it or not, in October. So consequently, I think your community-wide agenda is in real good shape, right? There's a lot of funding priorities there we have to finalize. I already have a draft, so we'll see that happening. The manager has also requested that we begin to think about an Eagle Pass, Maverick County days in Austin, like we did last session.
Yes.
It was successful, it was very productive,
Productive.
but now we do it a lot earlier, and we're already looking at February 7th timeframe. That'll come together in the next week to be presented to the community. I do believe as a professional that the community-wide agenda is the way to go, in Austin, Texas. I believe that we'll also be bigger this year, so we're gonna have to get a bigger room
Yes.
than we
And
did.
you know the big projects that are of importance,
Very much so.
Loop 480 and.
Very much so. So I appreciate the coordination. I appreciate coordinating with Aida Castaño. I bother her a lot, and she's very good at coordinating and getting the right things. The last thing I will
She said
mention.
she's changing her number, you just.
There is a $27 billion surplus this year in the state of Texas. It is in the media. A lot of people are looking at that money. I mean, billion, we're talking Oprah style money, right?
It's a lot of money.
There is leadership that believes it should go to property tax relief. That is one opinion. There's opinions regarding health and human services. There's regarding public education. What this community will be doing is getting in line. Because one thing for sure, if you don't get in line for the 27 billion, I'm gonna predict you're probably not gonna get any. So, getting in line is important. We've talked about it at the community-wide meetings. It is hard. It is a difficult process. Just like TxDOT. We get in the we get in the report, but we don't get listed in the project section. So I recommend that we continue to press on those issues.
Yes. Can you make sure that we're in that line?
That is part of my job.
Yes, sir. Please.
I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly what I was gonna bring up, because I remember the last time that we had that meeting at the trade center and stuff, that we wanna make sure that we are on their list of priorities and stuff, so we've been working for these things for a while now, so we wanna make sure that they come to fruition.
And whatever you recommend that we can do to make sure that our projects are being listened to and taken into consideration, please let us know.
And the day in Austin, we'll coordinate
Yes.
directly with State Representative Eddie Morales' office
We'll be there.
on that success.
Well, thank you.
That's
Thank
all
you
I
for
have.
being here. Appreciate it.
Good to see you.
Mayor, if we can go back to the development and finance.
Yes, absolutely.
I was wondering if they were seeing.
Yeah, like I said, we have quite a few number of things working all together. So I want to take some time here to really congratulate the whole team here. Finance, grants, everybody, engineering, we really came together. You may have heard that we ended up getting a $3.25 million grant through EDA for the extension of Patsy Wynn, which was notified, last week. So we definitely want to make sure that we point that out.
That was huge. That was huge, and we saw the announcement, and we're very excited about that.
Teamwork, and really everything's moving forward. So I just want to point that out.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Marquez. Appreciate it. Human resources, library, marketing, municipal court, parks and recreation, planning and building, police, code enforcement, security, animal control, public works, waste management, and the tax department. Well, everyone is doing a great job, so keep it up.
Let me just ask something on parks real quick.
Yes,
On the,
Mr. Sanchez.
because I know how we have like subcontracted out the maintenance and stuff like it, and stuff. But do they report back like on water usage as well as like ant problems and stuff like that? Because I've had some citizens that live in the area that have brought those concerns to me about that there's like a lot of ant mounds at the plaza. That's one. And the other thing is that sometimes that the sprinklers are on for extended periods of time, like way beyond that there's a lot of leakage. So I want to make sure that we're also exemplifying what we're asking the residents to do, which is conserve water.
Right.
So I mean, I'm just wondering if, because I mean, I don't know if you have personnel going out there, since we have other people that we contract out that are doing maintenance. So I know you're a little bit limited on personnel to do that, but I just.
Yes, first of all, good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good
Yes,
afternoon.
as we all know, the contracted maintenance of the parks is contracted out, but we do have communication between myself and my assistant director with the owner, and we do communicate to him, as far as if there's any complaints or any concerns, as far as irrigation, ant problems, anything else. And at the same time, we also send staff if we need to send staff, so we are in communication constantly with them.
Yeah, because you might want to look at it, because I know there's a lot of runoff on the water at the plaza sometimes. Because I had one of the residents that lived close by tell me that she had seen them, that they were on like for almost 2 hours straight. I said, well, that seems, like I said, that I would just bring up the concern. I didn't see it myself. So, I mean, I don't know, the time might have been.
What we would recommend, if any citizen sees that, to call our offices, at 773-4343, so we can communicate to the maintenance department.
Right.
And we'll go ahead and send someone, but I will
So you might wanna
communicate
just have someone
to check all the
that,
sprinkler
yeah,
systems,
that as well as
the
ants
timers and all
and
that.
the ants in that area.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I know the leagues are up and running and everything's going well. I know y'all have some other leagues that y'all might be bringing up. Any updates on some of those? Or?
Yes, sir. Right now, we just started with our after-school league 2 weeks ago, where we have 66 teams participating in our volleyball and flag football league, over 750 participants. But we are working on some other leagues that we're going to be bringing up before this month or next month.
You know what, Mr. Sanchez, since you mentioned the leagues, and I did call Mr. Gutierrez about this, and I know that you all have your own schedule, but I did have 3 parents that called me and 2 that sent a message and just kind of said, like, can you please call me? But I knew it was regarding that, so I just gave one general answer to everyone. I did call him, unfortunately, I'm sure he got busy, he didn't call me back. But the parents are concerned with, and I know that it's hard to do, it is hard, that for the major events, for the school calendars to be checked so that we can schedule games and stuff when there's no,
When-
like
when
for
is that
example,
good?
I'm gonna give you an example, and the main concern was about the homecoming parades for both, CC Wynn and high school, and that there were games scheduled those days. And that even if they don't get to like change
The games.
you know, sometimes I think the other schools are willing to make the change or whatever, but if one of them is not, then they forfeit the game, you know? And so they're like, okay, so where do we go, you know, most students that participate in events are the same kids, you know?
One thing our staff, you know, and Mr. Gutierrez, they do check the schedule from the school district and our schedules. And, you know, it's hard, 66 teams to schedule.
And I agree,
You know,
I agree.
we have, you know, so we have one football field that we're playing at, and then we have 2 volleyball courts. So when you have all these teams and you're giving them 8, 9, 10 games per team, it's kind of hard to finish and forget. But
I
we'll
agree
look
100%,
into
but I did
it.
say that I was gonna bring it up.
Yes.
And I'm bringing it up.
Yes, no, and we'll look into it, yes.
Okay.
All right, no, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
We'll move on to item 9, consideration and possible approval of a resolution appointing members to the Mayor's Youth Council of the City of Eagle Pass. Mr. Morua, I know that we're working.
Yes, we're working on that list, for the youth council and also for the fitness council.
Right.
So Mr. Gutierrez has been very active on working on that. Unfortunately, he had to be out, this day, so we weren't able to finalize the list.
Okay, and we do have lists also from council members that
Yes, when I said that you and review the list, we have some proposed names, but I know you wanna include other names, so I wanna make sure that we clean up the list before we get back to that.
excellent. So, right now, we'll ask to table this item.
Yes, sir.
Okay, can I get a motion?
So,
Motion by Councilman Davis, second by Councilwoman Cruz. All in favor? Unanimous. Yes, sir.
I know we met always calls, but can y'all just communicate with us again, who we have or where we making changes? I mean, you can do that later.
Yes.
As a reminder, because it's
Right.
a lot of them missing.
Yes,
And-
I wanted to check too, because this was established about 2 years ago. So those members actually didn't get to serve, so we're
I
gonna
know.
see, if they are able to serve again, and willing to serve again. Some of them probably already graduated high school, but there's other members that may be able to serve again.
Yes, thank you. So 10 is similar, and I'll go ahead and read it. Consideration and possible approval of a resolution appointing members to the City of Eagle Pass Mayor's Fitness Council. I'll also ask to table this item.
You want-
So that's fine.
We have a motion by Councilman Davis, and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Ramon.
Yes, sir.
Discussion, all in favor, unanimous, thank you. Item 11, consideration and possible action on the preliminary plat approval of Raleigh subdivision, including 1, a subdivision variance from the requirement of 2 points of vehicular access, and 2, a sidewalk waiver from the requirement to construct a sidewalk. Mr. Malera?
Yes, Mayor, Council, thank you. This item, as you mentioned, is a preliminary plat. It's just under 11 acres. The applicant here is Mendez Engineering on behalf of Isabel A. Ramon as the owner, as a subdivider. The property is partially inside city limits and partially out. A little over 7.5 acres approximately is inside city limits, and then another 3, a little over 3 is outside. The area adjacent that is within city limits is zoned industrial. The highway does have utilities, so it is infrastructure is there for development along the highway. And water has been run through another developer who's constructing a road that this ties to the Eagle Pass Ranch Road development. So it is now, there is pavement and water connecting to this property. Here's a map view, and you can see it's a little over 1,000 feet in off of Highway 57. And it's not really clearly depicted based on this, but part of it is inside the dash line, which is city limits, and then part is outside of that. Here's another view of the plat again, and you can see here to the right is that Eagle Pass Ranch Road, recently constructed road here to the right, which would be how access to this development would be off through 57 and off of that road. There is an electrical easement running across the property, and I don't think I have a drawing of it, but I'll point it out here. The top portion is the lower lying area, and that top portion is where they will have a detention pond construction to capture additional stormwater runoff from this development. Here are a couple of photos of what it looks like, taken from that new road. And the top picture, or the left picture, you could just barely make out the Ford logo. So you could see we're going facing kind of towards into town. You could see one of the water towers in the background as well. So this would be as you're entering 57 towards town from 57. Here's a view straight on to the property. As if you can remember back the plat, it's narrow in the portion fronting the road. It is undeveloped land at this point. Here's another view from beside the road, and this will come into play later in the meeting when we discuss the sidewalk variance. So there is a significant drop off from the road level to the property level, from the ground level, and that was one of the main points brought up by the engineer of record in asking for a sidewalk variance, in that the construction of one would be a little bit more detailed, having to deal with that slope coming down. So I just wanted council to have a view of what that looks like. There's another couple of views of that same thing from ground level, looking up at the roadway, which is at a higher elevation. We do have the waterworks certifications on this, as well as fire flow tests for that, water levels. I did want to point out here the sidewalk waiver, and copied the ordinance here. The important part is the part in larger font there, which says sidewalks are not required along those streets in an industrial park where A, the industrial park is not adjacent to a residential district or within 200 feet thereof, or B, the streets in the industrial park are not the most direct pedestrian route from a residential area to a school, park, shopping area, other public facilities, or other residential areas. The Director of Planning will consider every residential area planned and or proposed, and all existing and or proposed streets leading into the proposed industrial park. So this one is, I feel, kind of right on the border of this, because the area around it is industrial, but it's not an industrial park. We don't know what the future developments will be if they are annexed and zoned. At this point, it's county land out there, so there's no zoning for county property. So I feel like it's kind of close to meeting this requirement, but I wouldn't say by definition it does. So,
Mr. Maynard, and that was another question of mine. I understood right now that part is city and the other part is a little bit of county. Do we have to worry about annexation on the part that it's not the city because of what we're dealing with right now with the road issue?
So we work in conjunction with Maverick County Planning and the county in general for any development with an ETJ. So this would, this falls into that category just as others do.
So we might.
So they chose on this one, a couple things came into play. One, they said that tracts over 10 acres, which this one is over 10 acres, do not require to go through their planning process. So that immediately they were exempt and didn't go. So it was strictly our review on this particular one. And then in terms of future, building permitting and things like that would possibly be, confusing maybe to say, well, part of my land is in city and part is county. Who do I need to go to for a permit? The county has indicated that, again, based on the way that we followed this platting process, that the permitting would go through us too. So it's a good question you bring up. We kind of looked into that too, because you kind of get into that question of who's going to be the regulatory agency for.
And just since we're discussing the road right now, I think it's a perfect timing to actually just be on the same, just at least we know that we're in the same position, and we can actually make a decision right now before anything happens, so that we can start annexing everything and the road makes sense. In other words,
it's a really important point to bring up.
Because that's our priority right now, and that's
definitely.
our goal. So maybe it's the right timing, but I don't know.
Yeah, we encouraged with this when the applicant came in and saw that most of it was in, probably 70-ish% was inside and the rest was not. We encouraged them to annex the remaining portion, but they chose not to. They chose to proceed this way, to leave it as is.
Why is the road higher than the land? Where I get that it's hard to build a sidewalk because it's like that, but why is it built like that?
I would need to get some feedback from the engineer record for that particular
Right.
project. It must be due to elevations and
Elevation.
just probably storm drainage in order to get the water where it needs to get. I don't know if Mr. McGee, if you happen to have any comment you'd like to add?
The new road? But is
the
it the
picture-
new road or the?
The picture that,
Yeah,
right
because
there.
I saw it, but I wasn't sure if it was a new.
right there, you see?
But is it the new road?
This is a new road,
Yeah.
which is a separate
That was the question
project.
that I had in the last meeting, that why did we approve it at a higher level than, instead of going down, digging more and putting it at flat with the, because that's gonna create problems. But then I spoke with the engineers after that, and they explained that they were going to do some type of drainage to take the water away.
Yes, this road will be surface drainage
But
management.
that was my concern, no storm
it-
drainage and the level, I mean,
Right.
the height, it was not good in my eyes. But again,
Right.
I mean, they explained. there
I
was
could
a
research that a little bit more and get back to you. That is the other project, Eagle Pass Ranch Road Development. So I don't have that information with me as far as this Raleigh subdivision, but it obviously goes hand in hand because that road is how they get to this.
Now, the other request is for a variance, requirement of 2 points of vehicle access.
Yes. So let me go back to plat view. So as you can see, it's a irregularly shaped lot. As you can see, the bulk of the property is at the back with the narrower frontage towards the road or to the entrance. So in this case, there's two major things and why we're recommending approval of that variance from 2 is, one, it's very narrow frontage, so it wouldn't provide much benefit at all to have 2 driveways right next to each other under this subdivision. The other part is that it is technically a subdivision. It wasn't platted before, so they need to go through this platting process, and it is considered subdivision, but it's just one tract for one warehouse, industrial development. So essentially, it's one lot. We once it's developed, it's going to be one lot. It's not necessarily going to be a pass through or multiple things involved. It's going to be one business, and so again, it wouldn't necessarily. There's many businesses, and we don't require them all to have 2 entrances, ingress, egress to their individual lot. So those are the 2 main reasons why we feel the reasons for a variance from that are applicable here.
What's the length of the vehicle entrance?
This portion, the narrow portion,
Yeah,
the
more or
frontage,
less?
the frontage,
Yes.
it's roughly 200 or so feet. Yeah, so it's really not a large area to put 2. It's not really feasible.
Did
to
the
report to.
planning and zoning board discuss this already?
They did.
And what did they?
They did approve with the variance as well. They definitely had these similar questions on why it was needed, but ultimately the approval was made after the same discussion.
Okay.
Yes. Yep, good question. Did that explain?
So what's your recommendation?
So the recommendation is to, actually just two more quick points that I wanted to show.
Please.
Here's a star. Here's the star showing the approximate location, and here's the nearest residential. The variance referenced residential, and so it is about 4,000 feet away. It's not really near at this point. But again, thinking about proposed development, I do expect that this area, Stoneway, Settlement, residential will keep growing. The city continues to grow, and at a minimum, I expect it'll eventually go to the canal, which you can see running in between there. So I do think we need to factor that into the future of, not just thinking, well, it's just ranch land out there and just industrial, but we probably will see growth and residential come closer and closer over the years. So having said that, the recommendation is to deny the sidewalk waiver request, to grant the subdivision variance for the 2 points of vehicular access ingress and egress, and grant the preliminary plat approval for the subdivision.
Okay, well,
That's what planning and zoning recommended?
The same, yes, the
To
same
deny.
way we recommended them, they approved this way. And
What is the reason that you said that you're denying the sidewalk, or y'all are proposing to deny it?
so, by definition or by regulation, the sidewalk should be in place, in general. And then we cover those reasons why there could be variances. And I didn't feel 100% comfortable that those variances are applicable in this situation. And with the, again, pointing to that future growth of potential residential, we don't currently have a thoroughfare plan, we're working on that, but I do expect that like Bibb would extend out and connect to future 480. So there will be a grid of infrastructure, homes, businesses, and so it's difficult for us to tell if there will never need to be pedestrian traffic through this area. So we don't ask for it now, the burden would be with the city if we don't ask for sidewalk at this point. The engineer record, I believe, was on the line, and he also made some comments at P&Z, so if you're open to that, he may be able to further explain their request.
I just wanted to make sure that P&Z had taken a look at this. It's good that we consider their opinion because they're there for a reason,
Yes.
right? And then,
I have two legal questions, so I will make a motion to move it to executive session, since we're having executive session, and we can just maybe ask a little bit more detailed questions to either legal and our engineer.
okay, we have a motion to take item 11 into executive session by Councilwoman Cruz and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Ramon. Discussion, all in favor, unanimous. We'll take this to executive session. Item 12, confirmation by City Council of Civil Service Commission appointee per Civil Service Act, Section 143.006B.
Yes, Mayor, I'm recommending Mr. Enrique Montalvo to be reappointed to the Civil Service Commission.
Do we have a motion by Councilman Davis to approve that? And a second by Mayor Pro Tem Ramon. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. 13, discussion and possible action on the City of Eagle Pass Downtown Development Master Plan. Mr.
Good evening, Mayor and
Marquez,
Council.
back.
Like I said, this will be one of a few different items that we have for you tonight. Before we start, I wanted to introduce a couple of team members that may or may not have been introduced to the public already. I would like to introduce Ms. Ali Mendoza. She was recently promoted to Assistant Director, and of course Ms. Mala Rodriguez, which is the new Main Street Manager. I just want to point out that these individuals have been working very tirelessly on both this particular item that you're about to be presented and many others that are going to be presented here tonight. So I just wanted to get a chance to introduce them. Sinaida, being the new Main Street Manager, of course, is going to be the person in charge of implementing these different items that we're going to be suggesting here tonight. So with that, I'll pass on the mic to Ms. Sinaida.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Hello. It's good to be here. And we're really excited to bring this long-awaited presentation to you. So just a little timeline of the Downtown Master Plan drafting. We kicked off last October with joining forces with Able City, who came on, and they were just as passionate as we were about our downtown Eagle Pass. So as Arturo mentioned, I was recently promoted to Main Street Manager, but in my previous post as the Art Center Coordinator, I was in the Economic Development team and have been a part of the drafting since we started. So this January as well, we held week-long charrettes where we hosted a ton of stakeholders, meetings, a lot of public invitations to come on out and give all their feedback to our Downtown Master Plan. And we were really excited with all the feedback that we got, how it was implemented into the drafts that we got. And throughout this whole year, we had several inputs and phases of drafting. So the Downtown Master Plan is intended to be a living, working document, so we're always going to be working on it, but it is meant to be our guide for the next few years to restore, to renovate, and to revitalize the historic Eagle Pass downtown. So with us on Zoom, we have Leslie Abumrad, which was our project manager from Able City, and here in person, I'm really excited to invite Mr. Mario Peña to give you the presentation of our final draft of our master plan for any final input and suggestions. So, Mr. Peña, if you will.
Appreciate it.
Hello, Mr. President.
Mayor, Council.
Welcome.
Great to be here. I'm not sure if the mic is picking me up, but
Yes,
I think
sir.
there's a presentation somewhere on here. I might need some help pulling it up because I didn't put it in here.
Click on
Is
this
that it?
browser.
I think this is it.
Okay.
That might be it.
There it is.
And then we want to go to. I have both, but I was told to do but I can do a full screen.
So although they're presenting today, we cannot take action on this item because it has to go to the planning and zoning department first.
Okay, good to know, Counselor, thank you. So this is just
A
strictly
presentation.
just a presentation?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you,
Mhm.
Ms. Aguilar.
thank you, Ms. Casano.
So I can continue like this, but I would probably need a little bit of tech help to get it on full screen.
Is anyone good with PowerPoint?
Minimize this, okay.
This little arrow pointing.
This guy? Thank you, great, thanks very much. Let's put it right there. All right, great. And so by the way, it is sort of fortunate that this becomes a presentation. It gives the council the opportunity to really digest this the next couple of weeks, and then and we'd love to take your input based on the presentation here, and that's the fact that now you've got the pre-final book in your hands, and you can give us some more.
Very detailed.
So thank you. Yes, it is. It is. It's supposed to be your guidebook. We really dove deep. We really learned. We plugged ourselves into the community and enjoyed doing so. But we were able to, I think, get a very good perspective about the needs and really the fantastic opportunities that you all have here in downtown Eagle Pass. So now that I already went through this, we started in October. We had a site visit in November where all of the consultants came in and just sort of walked around downtown, got to know it, absorbed it a bit with staff. And then we had a community design charrette, which was 3 days of really intense work, talking to stakeholders, the general public. We spoke to some of you all, to staff. And it was very intense. We actually had a working draft of some of these catalytic projects based on that, and that's sort of the idea of a charrette, is that you kind of don't give yourselves time to really consider the obstacles. You're really thinking about opportunities, and then from there you start getting it to work as you learn more of the context. We started drafting the plan from February to September. It was a good long process to do that. We had additional stakeholder meetings with the draft plan in hand, and so now we are at this beginning of the adoption meetings, right? So we go to planning and zoning, and then we come back to you, and then hopefully we'll get back to so I'll get into just a brief overview of the process of listening. So the cornerstone of all of the work we do on the planning and policy side of our firm is really listening to constituents, listening to stakeholders, and we took our time doing that. This is why this was a year-long process. We wanted to make sure we got this right. So we're really happy with the participation. There were over 90 participants through the process in general. We had 13 stakeholder meetings. In general, we had almost 200 survey responses. Like I said, we had this public workshop. People came in. We actually set up our office there at the theater at the Aztec. So we had our computers there. People could come in and give us their suggestions. It was just an open office space, and the whole community could come in and chat with a designer. We had this hands-on session, which is that charrette, where everyone gave us their ideas on paper. Everyone rolled up their sleeves and just got creative with us. And through those 3 days, we had topic discussions with all sorts of folks, these sort of layers of people with interests in downtown. And these are folks that are already active. They're advocates for their particular interest and what they're trying to do for their city. And so we're trying to bring them in and really gain some perspective about what it is they want, what they can do, how they can participate, because these are usually the folks that are going to push the implementation part of this plan forward along with you, so they become your partners. So we begin those conversations from the very beginning. We went out and talked to your restaurateurs and other business owners, and we got input from them individually. Like I said, we had the open studio. We did a visual preference survey where we gave them sort of what different parts of downtown and characteristics of different downtowns across the world do you like and which ones do you not like? We talked about the urban form, what kind of housing is appropriate for downtown Eagle Pass. And then we had this one-word activity where we asked folks to tell us what they think about downtown Eagle Pass today and what they want to think about downtown Eagle Pass in the future. And we compiled them, and so this is, the larger the word, the more it was repeated in that exercise. So it's good to see potential there. That was exciting to see. Obviously old, empty is there. So there's some aspirational things and there's some things to be concerned about, which is what we're responding to. And then what we wanted downtown Eagle Pass to become. Right? So wonderful destination, inviting, tourism, innovating, fiesta. That's right. So with all that in hand, we distilled it down to these 5 community vision topics. We heard a lot about having a healthier, walkable downtown. That was important. That's important to any downtown, really. But that connection at that pedestrian scale is very important for a downtown. A celebration of your culture and history. It needed to be thriving for local businesses. It needed to be a destination for, and we heard this, usually when we hear about destinations in a downtown, we hear about tourism, but there was a lot of sort of wishful thinking about downtown Eagle Pass being a destination for locals, which is great to hear. Like, people wanted to have places to come to downtown. There was a lot of nostalgia about what downtown used to be, and people wanted to come back, and they wanted that for their children. And then young people want it as well, right? So there was that sort of local love of downtown, right? And then a place for families, all right? So having that mix, not just the party scene, but a place to come hang out on the weekends with your family. And so we distilled it down to this vision statement, all right? And I'll read this out loud too. Downtown Eagle Pass is popular for its vibrant places to enjoy outside, like scenic parks, plazas, and riverfront, on top of its thrilling small business and historic landmarks. With something for everyone, Downtown Eagle Pass is a lively, tight-knit platform for sports, history, arts, and culture. So this is what guided us in our recommendations. So there was a high-level, sort of aspirational mission statement for the entire master plan, and that's what you see in front of you. And then there are some sort of other guiding principles for our design, and we'll get to that in a minute when we get to the catalytic projects. This is an overview of the chapters of the plan. I'm going to move this over because it's kind of getting in my way. Here we go. So it's very detailed. It's broken up into all these layers, and I'll take you through each one here just very quickly, so you can kind of find, as you read it yourselves, you can kind of have a mental map of it as you dive in. Okay, so beginning with existing conditions. So we looked at demographics, what your economic scene looked like, local businesses, what housing looked like. So getting a picture of what existed downtown, right? Beginning with that, that's the first thing we have to begin to understand. We looked at your land use and zoning ordinances. We took a deep dive of what part of your, especially your land development code, are there any hindrances to development downtown? Is it harder to build a building downtown? Is it harder to build a building that looks like a downtown building, right, in downtown? Sometimes parking requirements that are a little higher, that are built for suburban areas, are hard to implement downtown without sort of destroying the character of that compact downtown. So making sure all of that was compatible. So we looked at the whole book and we made recommendations to make sure that there was compatibility and it was legal to continue to build downtown the way we love downtown, the way you love downtown. We looked at economic development in general, and we developed an economic development toolkit that gave you a guidance on what kind of economic development tools should be implemented, where and why, and we gave you a framework to make those decisions. We saw the need to have special character districts that are related to the activities that are happening downtown. This helps you with wayfinding, with branding, and so the creation of this district it's a branding exercise, but it's also something that could go into your development code. You want it really easy to build bars in a certain area, but not in others, and housing in others. So you start to sort of do some smart choices about where you want to concentrate certain types of economic activity. We looked very closely at your mobility, right? How do you get around downtown in all modes, especially the pedestrian mode? Is it safe to walk downtown? But you're on the border. There's 2 international bridges. It's important to keep that traffic flowing. So making that compatible was important. The public realm in general. What do your sidewalks and streets look like to support the character? Are they shaded? What kind of standards should you implement on those streets to make sure that we're supporting canopies on buildings, trees for shade? How wide should the sidewalks be? What kind of pavement should they have? Should we have parking on the street? Where should that parking be? What does that look like? All that access, also sort of universal access. People that are on, in wheelchairs. We make sure we accommodate for them as well. Wayfinding. So all of the standards to develop a consistent signage ordinance for the downtown is in the master plan. Infrastructure in general. Are the utilities in place to have that increase in usage for downtown? How do we fund those? How do we prioritize that? So everything that happens underground, right? That's what the infrastructure is. And then next, housing. Expanding the housing options, right? So we don't just have single-family residential and then apartments, but there's all this variety of types of houses in between that can be plugged into the downtown, and they're appropriate for that, right? So what we call middle housing, right? Not big apartment buildings and not single-family homes. Everything in between needs to be legal, and we need to sort of picture where those go downtown. Arts and culture. So developing the arts and culture corridor. How do we program to sort of incentivize the arts and culture scene in a certain part of downtown? All that is there. And then historic preservation, right? What you have to do, what kind of guidelines you have to be looking at to support historic preservation. If you have an influx of investment, how do we make sure that influx of investment is supportive of preserving a historic downtown like the one you have here in Eagle Pass? And then next we'll get to catalytic projects. And I'll go through each of these. There's about 6 projects that I'll go through. If you want me to stop and pause and you have some questions, it's a great time to answer. Are there any questions on what I've gone through up to now?
What does that mean, catalytic projects?
Good question. Okay. So typically in any city, there are capital improvement projects that are like the Riskin building, right? There was an investment in that building. There is an improvement on the bridge. Everyone has great ideas, right, to do something with the available resources that a city has. So the point of identifying catalytic projects is that we look at a series of or candidates for projects, and we identify whether they are hitting all of those layers together, and then those sort of rise to the top. So if you have an investment that helps you with economic development, is it aligned with the overall plan in terms of, is it in the right location to have a bar or another type, an incubator, or whatever you're thinking of having. So we check it against its alignment, not only its alignment, but how many of those switches does it pull for you, so that it's working together sort of in a multi-layered way. And so we looked at all of that, all of the projects that were suggested, that we heard in the community, and we analyzed it in terms of how many of these boxes does it check to move the plan forward, right? So it's not just doing the one thing for the one landowner, which is great, but we wanted to help actually create more activity around it. So it catalyzes more activity, it creates more, so it's the thing that spurs the growth in some way. We'll get to this map in a minute, but these are also the locations of the catalytic projects, and we connected them all together. All right, so the first one is Activate Main Street. So as you know, you've added some very simple things to Main Street, like adding lights, and there's already things happening. I'm not, you know, and you've invested in the Riskin building, you invested in the Aztec Theater, and you've already seen some surge of excitement in that area, right? So it's like taking that to the next step. What does that mean? And so I think of vital importance is to turn it into a place that is absolutely pedestrian friendly. So the idea is to mark it on the ground, and there's sort of like a psychological flip that switches if you just change the paving from asphalt to pavers, for example. And it's a friendlier sort of cobblestone, it's a cobblestone street. We're suggesting that we remove the curbs and we make it a curbless space. So it's a shared street, what we call a shared street. So traffic, you got to get the traffic, the speed limit for cars way down, and it becomes more of a pedestrian area. It's also built so that when you have major events downtown, you can close a couple of blocks, like between Monroe and Adams. That's sort of the area where we're focusing on, where you can close it off and you can have a temporary pedestrian mall. And you can try that out. Business owners get a little uncomfortable when we say close down the street, but if you design it a certain way where it can sort of be both, and you can experiment with the economic activity that happens when you just let pedestrians in, and then that may expand, or you may reduce, or you may adjust, but it gives you the ability to do that. But as a basis, it becomes a more pedestrian-friendly place to be. So that's, where are we here? Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next one. Any questions on the Main Street? Okay, there we go. The next one is the Central Plaza. So some of you may all know, some of you all may have already heard, during the charrette, with our discussions with all of, really what rings a bell is your restaurateurs, people who own restaurants downtown. Some of them were empty, they were sort of coming out of the pandemic, but they all seem to say, well, we have people that want to come to downtown and they want to bring their families, but there's nothing for families to do. You know, they're just going to come to the restaurant, drive there, go back home, but they can't hang around, right? And there's really no place for children and families to do another activity other than just come eat, right? Or that one function. So they can't spend the day there. So we identified that there was really a big need for green space downtown. Yes. And a need for green space sort of right smack in the middle of where all the activity is happening. And so we saw the IBC parking lot, and we figured, well, you know, maybe it's a crazy idea, but it definitely seemed like the perfect spot to do it. And we were able to accommodate the IBC parking spots in the street behind the building, right, between the courthouse and the IBC bank. And so that could have potentially freed up that space, that, you know, beautiful space right in the middle of and right along Main Street for this main park space. This is just one piece of the puzzle in terms of green space. There needs to be a variety of green spaces in all downtown, all the way from this sort of plaza space to a small little pocket park somewhere. There's other formats, right, to start plugging in. You want green space to be within walking distance from every point in downtown. That's important. So you've got to sort of plug them in everywhere. But we're excited to show you this plaza, which then becomes now the main plaza. And it's a highly programmed plaza. What that means is it's a plaza that can have playgrounds and other activities, so people can actually use it for recreation as well. It's very different from a historic plaza, which is usually, you know, a place you walk around. It's a calmer place. You put that sort of next to more residential space. So like the residential area you have just a little north of this has a plaza just like that. And that should remain as a historic plaza. But this is San Juan, yes. But this is a highly programmed and active plaza that's supposed to activate the Main Street.
I love this idea. Since the first time that they mentioned this, we need to do this.
Yes, yeah, we felt that in the charrette when we presented it. I think there was a lot. And so then this is just a shot from the street of what that could look like. And so it's visible.
Throughout the years, I mean, we have tried so many things and attract people and attract the same local people. I mean, eventually, I mean, I have a business in downtown, but you still need that light and brightness and inviting kind of,
Green.
factory, yes, greeneries, parking. So I think everything is just making sense and putting everything together. Now it makes sense in a way that everything flows. So I guess my main, I have always keep saying the pavers make a difference, no sidewalks on the sides. It's more inviting. It gives you that feeling of wanting to be there.
Absolutely.
And actually walking, and I think it's great for the businesses because it doesn't matter, you don't see it as blocks, it's just, you see it as, okay, I'm having fun, I'm enjoying the view, we have seating areas around it, and it's just welcoming to the store. So I think, the flow that everything is just, it's great. I really love it, and I know that it's too much to ask, and maybe it sounds ridiculous, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's, I've been having it in my mind. If we have that design, is there a possibility of maybe adding like a little tiny railroad for like the kids and the families to actually enjoy a ride, going or taking you all the way to the river walk, golf course, museum, let's say, something like that. If it can be included for the future.
Sure.
Now that, if we start breaking streets, let's say, or sidewalks, then we can probably just have it
Make some
prepared
preparations.
for
Sure.
the future. I think it will be great just to have like a little tiny tour, and it will be nice to have people or tourists from one side to the other. And that will be, for all ages, just so that they don't have to walk all the way, let's say.
Sure.
And having less traffic, I think it will be a nice thing to do. Maybe we can talk to the Union Pacific and something there.
Well, it's exciting, yeah, to hear you say that.
But just something.
The connectivity between this and all the other spaces we thought about very carefully, and there are routes that are designated to really double down on that pedestrian traffic, and so along those routes you would do this.
Yeah, that like the scooters and all that. I've never been against it. It's just that I guess it was not the perfect timing. Having an environment like this, then it might make sense. But right now, with the kind of traffic that we have, with the streets the way they are, the sidewalks, it's just, I guess we're not prepared. Maybe now it's more inviting and it makes sense to go from one side to the other.
Absolutely.
And actually enjoy the downtown. I guess we're getting there and it's looking great. So thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I do have a question.
Sure.
All this looks beautiful and it will be just great. And I don't mean to be the Debbie Downer in the group, but do we have any grants, any funding, anything for this, Mr. Marquez, in the works or in plans? Because this is beautiful. It will be great for us to get to have any of this. What's in the plan?
Yeah, I'm actually glad you asked that specific question because most agencies like EDA, USDA, and all of those typically look for a plan that we have. Typically, they're looking that we have some sort of design already set up, that we're not just kind of picking these projects out of thin air and just going for it. So the adoption of this plan in itself is the first stage for us to be able to
get a grant.
Yeah, to identify which ones can be grant funded, which ones can be done through public-private partnerships, and which ones the city can take on. So as we go through these projects, the next step forward is to, of course, identify them, extract them, and then from there identify the ones that do need grant funding. Because as you can see, even in this picture alone, you'll see that the bus is there. So now we have a component of public transportation into this project. So as we identify these needs and we identify, like, if we just isolate the Central Plaza in a project of its own, we have transportation, we have green space, we have public spaces, and from there those definitions can help us seek out grants. So the first stage is to do this, to adopt the plan. Again, if there's any feedback, this is where we would need to hear it. So if we need to shift anything, and even along after the adoption process is taking place, if we need to shift anything as we're going through the grants, as we're going after the grants, then we can present this to the agencies and say, hey, we have a plan. We're not just kind of
talking about it.
Exactly. So yeah. So this is the first stage.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna move on to the next one.
I have to get excited.
And then another project that was in the works when we first sort of landed in Eagle Pass is conversation about converting some of the alleys in the back to occupied program space that can be used as an accessory exterior space to some of the businesses that are now beginning to prop up, especially along the Main Street. Right? And so in the plan, we've got a defined alleyway program that sort of guides staff into figuring out what components of these conversions to active space the city should have in hand to help businesses do this and participate in programs like this. So the first phase is already sort of well on its way, as you know, behind the Riskin building, and it connects. It also serves as a pedestrian connector behind buildings. So what we've been trying to do is identify how we can continue the alleyway systems, even if we have to cross a street, but then it continues behind buildings to then connect to the creek. So having the destination in both points then becomes it becomes a more active space because somebody can walk through the whole thing and have destinations on both sides. So we worked that through.
The beauty of that, and I appreciate that because I mean, a lot of business owners in the downtown that have alleys and they're pretty dark, and sometimes they work at night on the back. So that's a safety issue as well. I mean, for the police, it's going to be great news as well. They know very well that we always, have extra protection in the alleys because they're dark and there's not much going on. So they become, a factor there for homeless people and other problems. So I think it's great because it's just not as expensive as you're not building anything. You're just creating pathways with light, you just bring them alive. So I appreciate that taken into consideration.
Mario,
So
if I might just real quick jump on this one. So this is actually a perfect example of having the plan and being able to work it out. Last month we were awarded $25,000 through Union Pacific to be able to, what you see on the picture, be able to add additional lighting and infrastructure for this specific project, which is of course we're calling the alleyway system. So again, without the plan, it's kind of hard for us to approach them. So this again is just a testament of how helpful this plan can be for us.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can get rid of
the X will, I hope I don't close you, but the little X on the far right, is this link or something?
There, I just
That's
moved it
good
down. There, we're good there. All right. So it's a program, and so the main components of the program are being able to respond to grants that help you with some branding and maybe some murals, lighting, and then helping with utility work on the city side, and maybe some paving and improvement of the surface area, of the walking surface for the alleys. Just some suggested sort of space conversions for the alleys. These are existing alleyways that we just dropped in a little bit of light, some planting, some chairs. It really, you don't have to do a whole lot to really make that conversion.
Very cool. Yeah.
All right, so next, Shelby Park. So this is sort of a big, broad move here for the park, for Shelby Park. But we heard this was a big priority for everyone we spoke to as we started this project, to really utilize this space along the river in a way that was more active, that worked with the regulation, added regulation as you build on the river. So that was a challenge, and that somehow responded to this feeling of having this sort of binational relationship. This is the sort of the place where we had an opportunity to have a gesture, right, and a symbolic, handshake interaction with the Mexican side of the river. So we began with just this is sort of a simple programmatic move we identified. There was a need for sort of parking for boats and just parking so people can use their boats and have a launch point. So really celebrating that and making a sort of a big move to create a place where people can actually do this. That was formal. It wasn't makeshift. That was serviceable and had all of the sort of bells and whistles to have this actually be an official place to have a launch point. We heard, and this is suggested in the plan, that there could be maybe a water shuttle that takes people to the casino and back to downtown and just have that connection along the river. So this is a place that could be a place to land and launch.
Of course, factors like building on a flood zone, all those come into consideration
Right, absolutely. So everything that we've suggested can be taken down in 8 hours, which is what you need to be able to respond to some emergency with flooding. Yeah. So it's all compatible with that. What activity, right? Do we can we have a shared experience with the Mexican side? And so we thought of maybe having a movie theater, right? A drive-in theater in the back, and then the screen can maybe have a double projector so that there could be also audience across the river, and they could be sharing this, a movie-going experience on the river. Okay, I'm going to go to the next one. The experience of pedestrians coming in on Bridge 1 right now is maybe not ideal, and so we wanted to make sure that having that sort of welcome embrace to all of the people coming in from Mexico on foot was really important. So there's a parking lot right at that corner of Commerce, Garrison and Jefferson, and well, actually it's on Commerce and Garrison. So taking the corner portion of that parking lot and having a liner building, sort of a welcome colonnade space. I'll have a render of it here. Okay, so when you walk into Eagle Pass, this is what people see. And so then you can have Weta, you can have other rentable space there, some suites for just other vendors to be able to serve people coming across, to just either for the basics and just enhance that experience coming in.
Where's the bridge in this?
The bridge is behind you here.
Okay.
So I'm going to go back.
On that other side is where Easy Club was, but it doesn't show up.
So the red building on the corner is that building, and so behind that building there'd still be some parking between the building and the creek, but the building itself is now the front facade as people come in from the bridge as they walk through.
Maybe it's a crazy idea, but I was suggesting, Mr. Marquez, maybe let's say that the budget to do that. In the meanwhile, if there's a possibility to just do like a kind of like a facade all the way, like a big whatchamacallit, like if it's enclosed, you pretty much do like a wall with fake windows, let's say, and you do like big marketing spots. Let's say welcome casino, we have welcome to this or this bar, and we have advertising all the way on that wall with light, and we have kind of like it's like a big wall around it, but it looks like a facade of a building when it's
like
not there, pretty much, but it's just like a... Did we get pictures, Zenaida, that we kind of got some ideas, right? So maybe I can just share it with you later on, but maybe so that we can maybe accomplish as much as we want without spending the millions and millions. I guess I have always said just the $1 million look without necessarily spending the $1 million. So we can do so many things with that concept in the meanwhile before we can actually build something.
Right. Well, it's always. I think we always recommend doing things in phases and in stages, and so you take little chunks of the apple as you go through, and the important thing is that you're improving it. All right.
No, but if you have the commercial space, it'll pay for itself.
Yes.
Right. There's if we have some tenants there, then you can do a public-private partnership where there's an opportunity to have tenants. Sure. This is a rendering of that crosswalk that would be crossing that space into Commercial Street.
What do you mean? Oh, downtown Commercial is this way.
Right. No, it's actually up on this drawing. You see the blue box in that crosswalk? So it's just basically improving the crosswalk, again, with pavers, and it's elevated, and you prioritize that pedestrian crossing, because that's the first opportunity that pedestrians have to go into the depths of downtown and actually come and experience downtown. Right. Let's see, no.
Because Adams is right here, and then Garrison is. Because Commercial is like another.
One more over. Yes, you're right.
Towards the river.
If I may interrupt, in the next slide, Mario, that's the bridge one, and you can see Commercial Street on the left.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So this is just a compilation of those improvements in Bridge 1.
That's
right?
really pretty.
So if you expand on Bridge 1, you reroute traffic. We've got some diagrams in the plan where some traffic is rerouted, and then that means Garrison can be more of what we call a complete street that is more walking friendly, and the traffic is calmed in this space because this is where that interaction between the heavy bridge use and we don't want to lose that pedestrian connection. So this is where we sort of took a lot of care in making sure that traffic worked, but that pedestrians were prioritized.
I really like what you did there, commercial.
Right. It's the gateway into the downtown area, so we want
That's
to make
really,
sure
that's very intelligent.
Again, just a shot of Bridge 1. There are some big bold moves in here as far as like beautifying and making better use of the structure you already have. So how can we sort of augment and make better use of a structure that we already have without going through the presidential permit thing? So the first thing is, can we beautify it? Can we make it can we make a place out of it as a background? So beautifying it is.
Where's the meadow back there? Take notes, Homero.
And so just one last one. There is a potential hotel site that I believe you all are in negotiations with to make happen, but it was identified as a catalytic project because it gives you that sort of downtown hotel experience, like the first new one that you maybe have had in a while. And there's a place to do it that connects your historic fort to the golf course and then onto downtown. So there's sort of a perfect place to be a connection point. And we just did some visualizations to help the process along and to help your negotiations to hopefully facilitate that and make it happen. So we just dropped down a hotel that is sort of engaging the historic fort and then also engaging the golf course and creek more on the north part of this design. And again, there's a creek here on the bottom of the drawing. Okay, and then just lastly, some improvements in Moncada Park, right? This is a very different character of area. There is a need for high traffic, commercial flow here. This is something the city is like, so this is where we sort of step back and we recognize this is not a completely pedestrian space. And how do we reinforce all of the efforts that you all are doing with trade? So just really helping the recreational area in the middle of this to grow and prosper and be more active. And so then we have, this is in your books, we have a chapter that just talks about how all of these projects are interrelated, how we connect them all economically, how we connect them all with mobility, how do we make sure that everything is interconnected. If you want to walk to all these places, it's important to have those corridors we prioritize for walking so that all of these great investments you're making along downtown should be connected through a safe pedestrian connection. And then just lastly, we have a chapter on implementation, and we just wanted to bring this up. This is just a toolkit that we have for your staff. We're in conversations to help them really read this, take a hold of this. This becomes sort of their downtown implementation Bible, and it's really easy to read and just check off the things that are being done. We've got the element of the plan that you can implement, and then who's responsible for it, and then references for how to get it done. Like Sanaya said, this is a living document. Our next, after adoption, we have a couple of more tasks to do. Our job isn't over. We are going to meet with all of those stakeholders again, right? And give them sort of the next steps for them to be champions of the implementation of this plan. And so we'll take them through, it's easy to tell staff, well, you make a living, it's your job to be here and be in charge of the plan, and they're very excited to take it on. But then the private sector and other stakeholders in the community have a part in all that. So we want to continue that conversation so they know what parts of this plan they're tasked with, and they have sort of the responsibility to make it happen along with you all, right? So it's not completely up to the city. You need your residents to help you push this along. questions?
Looks like an awesome plan. Man, you think like, well, if only downtown can look like that, that would be amazing, but I think it's possible. And this was the first step, getting the team together to get this plan in order, so it's awesome. No, this is how things become reality.
If you don't plan it, it'll never happen.
Right.
But I'd really like to commend you, because it's nice to see, I mean, I know in participating with y'all in the charrettes and stuff, and taking all the input that you took from everyone, and actually just, and infusing y'all's, you know, ingenuity and vision and experience, it just brings something like this. I thank you.
Well, we thank you. We thank the residents for being so active in this and really taking this on with us. And Arturo and Zenaida and staff, they've just been amazing to see this level of energy in a plan like this. It was just really great to be infected by their enthusiasm to work on this. It was a fantastic experience for us. So we're happy you liked it.
So right now we can't take action, Councilman?
No, unfortunately not.
I was ready. Yeah, I think we're all ready. But okay.
Next meeting.
Next meeting.
Yes.
When will this go to P&Z?
First.
It needs to go,
Yeah,
it needs to be put on the schedule.
We're just notified that the next PNC meeting will be next week, so we're hoping to take that for, final revision. But I do want to point out, just to take some brief moments here, to the public that is watching, of course, implementation is not successful without your input.
Right.
So if you're listening right now, if you're, whether on Facebook or here in this location, if you have input to give, please feel free to reach out to us, email us. You can reach out to us via phone at 773-1111, just ask for the Economic Development Department. Or if you can email us at opportunity@eaglepasstx.us. Again, we welcome all input. The presentation here is really short of the detail that you guys see before you. So if any member of the public wants to come in and have a copy, it's about 140 pages, I think, more or less. Yeah, of very, granular, detail of this plan. So if any member of the public wants to come in and again get a copy.
Yeah. The only thing that I don't know, and I was still going through some of it, I know I had gone through it before when you had shared with us some preliminary stuff also. But one thing I wanted to, and I'm not sure if I may have overlooked it, and I may be incorrect in saying this, but to see if we can just extend it to include our public library and then go down that way, because I would hate to have us be missing the boat, missing such a beautiful building and lots going on there. So to make sure it's all included as part of that project.
Yeah, the boundaries actually end on Sidon, so it's a block or two after.
But I didn't really see much like in the rendition, so that's.
Got it. So it's just a space we should focus on.
Definitely.
I want to thank you, Arturo, the staff. Thank you so much for all your hard work. We appreciate it. I know this took a while, and these are for us, right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
So
Have
much
a good
for
night.
your presentation.
See you soon. Thank you.
It's exciting. I guess we'll bring it back after that. Right? That was 13, so we'll go to 14. Discussion and possible approval of the historic revitalization contest.
Mayor and council.
Yes, sir.
So there's a little bit of a polishing that we need to do on this particular program. The funding has been approved through the hotel occupancy tax, but we'd like to go through it just one last time before we present it and adopt it tonight. So if we can, I'd like to table this item, please.
Okay. Can I get a motion to table? A motion by Councilman Davis. Second by Councilwoman Cruz. All in favor? Unanimous. We'll table 14. 15, presentation, discussion, and possible action on section 2023-94, Article 7, Chapter 23, subdivisions, and section 12, Appendix A, zoning of the city of Eagle Pass, Code of Ordinances relating to fences.
Yes, Mayor, Council. So the item was requested by Councilwoman Cruz. So we do have some background information to present, and then we're open to questions and take direction from.
I think we have a comment by our attorney.
Yes, sorry, if I may.
Yes.
There cannot be any action taken today. We can give action
So it's strictly for
Informational purposes and
information.
direction.
And then we can put it in an agenda, planning and zoning, and then to us.
I don't think it needs to go to planning and zoning, but what does need to be, is that there has to be a public hearing.
Okay. Okay, so, thank you for the clarification. Yes.
So go ahead. Okay, so, in 2020, an ordinance was passed, early 2020, where single-family homes of new subdivisions do require fencing to be done at the time of new construction. So in order to get your certificate of occupancy and be able to move into a home, the fence around the side and perimeter and the backyard needed to be in place. This specifically, it was adopted in 2020, but applied to only new subdivisions. Therefore, we're actually just getting to the point now where the majority of now new construction is falling under these new subdivisions where the fences are required. And one portion of the ordinance does allow for variances or upgrade fence material to be requested. It does require planning director and engineering, city engineer approval. So that is an important factor in terms of, the goal here was to have a very harmonious, uniform look to subdivisions where we had the same type of wooden picket fence. The ordinance still allows for people to upgrade to cinder block walls. Some people like the sheet metal that you kind of painted and it lasts a long time. It's some like the way it looks, others don't, but it's a durable material. So there's different options like that that are still allowed that wouldn't give us the uniform, harmonious look that I think was the objective here. Some concerns have been brought up over basically, when it was the ordinance was approved, but more so now we're hearing more of them. What they tell us is the lifespan of wooden fences, which is the standard prescribed by ordinance, don't have long lifespans. Most people get a 30-year mortgage, and they complain that a wooden fence isn't going to even last as long as they're going to be paying for it if it's tied into their loan. They say affordability is another issue. Typically, it's adding about $4,000 to $6,000 on top of the house cost. Appraisals, and we have a experienced realtor here, so they can probably describe this better than I can, but they tell me that fences don't add value to the appraisal. So when the bank does an appraisal, that's the max that they'll allow for a borrower to take on to buy a home.
If I may, Mayor, Council,
Go ahead.
and Mr. Madera, the reason, the concern raised pretty much is you have, of course, the front, the sides, and the back. So the sides, actually, the owners are both neighbors. So you cannot force anyone to build them because you can actually split the cost, or either you build it whenever you want because that's the longest actually walls that you're gonna spend on. Lineal feet, it's been going, way back for years about with a built concrete base, it's about $24 to even up to $30 a lineal feet. So you can imagine the cost of 4 sides of the fence. The problem here is that same as landscaping, when it comes to appraisals, you can show the appraiser or anyone the invoice of how much those things cost, and they will never add the right value or the actual value up to par. It's just a cap that they have, so you don't have the value on the appraisal. When you're working with a lender, pretty much, I've been doing this for 18 years, and people usually don't have all of the closing costs, from out of pocket. So we usually include it on the loan. So adding up to that on the fence, we don't get to that. So what I was suggesting to Mr. Madera and to council was maybe yes, for a more organized look, for to have a better start in the subdivisions. Maybe yes, tell them to do both sides of the front, which are the gates, and maybe one. You can have either 2 gates or one that is a gate and the other one is a fixed wall, and the back, because that belongs actually to the owner. and it's gonna cost probably, it's gonna be 100 lineal feet, so you're comparing, let's say, $2,400 to $2,500 up to maybe 7,000, 8,000 that you don't see it there. So sometimes the concern is that you're about to close and the people, neither the builder, and now that everything is going up so high on material, or the buyer, they don't have that amount of money. So you're not gonna allow them to buy their house or move in because of fence issues. So it's raising a lot of concerns. So maybe, I mean, what I was suggesting was the gates on the front and the back wall, and then they can make the decision with the neighbors in the future of splitting the cost or building it at their own pace. So that was pretty much my concern.
I too like in the back a uniform look. You want to avoid the issue we have on Flower Street, where we have a wood fence, a brick fence, a chain link fence, no fence, a fence that's falling apart, and we want our city to look nice, right? But yeah, I mean, I think what Councilwoman Cruz is saying to the back, anything abutting a street, to be.
I think that was the intent of this ordinance, because I remember when it had come through, when it was more to be exactly that, for the rear or whatever was facing a thoroughfare, you know, so it's, like, as you have, and I know that was a point that was brought up, was that in case you ever have other developments that the rear of the property was facing, I said, you wanna make sure that, I mean, you're driving through like a nice view, and it shouldn't be the way they're probably being utilized right now, where they have, you know, they park the cars to the back.
And to
But
developers
it really
as
shouldn't
well.
be that happening.
When we have developers and we have commercial property on the front, we actually have, as part of the development requirements, to have the fence towards the residential area, so that we can have a nice view and clean view, and we don't have a mess of the backyards when you're going on the highway or a road and you just see it because there's nothing built there yet.
As it stands now, right now, the ordinance reads that you do have to have a wood fence in the back, and the issue I think is on the sides that people.
Because right now they're requiring to have all all sides fenced in, so it's becoming quite an issue for, the numbers are not there for either the builders or the buyers, so I understand that we want that orderly concept, and I agree. I just think that since the sites are not 100% ownership of, the owner of the property or the house, I think that can be done later on, or discussed through neighbors, or if one as the owner don't have a neighbor yet and they want to do it, by all means, and then the neighbor will have one for free, one side. But we cannot do something mandatory when maybe, the money is not there, but they're allowed to live in their house because, it's a right that we cannot take away, but because of the fence. But I guess the back and the front completely understand, it's just the sides is what I was trying to make sense to it.
Yeah, there's a couple good points that I'd like to respond to. One is, what do other cities do? We looked at several. It is pretty typical what we talked about, thoroughfares, anything where there's a frontage of, flowers, where maybe the backs of them are to a public right of way, or even corner lots is generally where you want that uniformity throughout the neighborhood. If they're all, wooden pickets, it definitely gives a certain look of cohesiveness. But when you're in between the lots, we didn't find any other cities that have something as what we've adopted recently and have been imposing. So I don't know, maybe there's somebody else out there, but we weren't able to locate any other cities that require all the fencing to be done at construction. And I do agree with all the council sentiment. It is very important to make sure, like the Flower Street, those type of things, Town Square Boulevard, things like that, that they have all in sync fencing, because as you're driving through that, it's very noticeable when they're changing from one lot to the next.
So other cities don't have that requirement where you have to do the 4?
We couldn't find any city that has that.
Now, let's say hypothetically speaking, we were to agree that, hey, maybe that's a very stringent requirement. Could we impose a restriction as to just throwing like a chain link fence, if you want that you couldn't do a chain link fence in between two homes or something like that?
Could or could not? Are you saying
Can we not, like, can we put restrictions like that?
council could choose?
Right.
Yeah,
Could
usually
choose those
the
type of things.
restrictions already kind of pretty much, say that, but sometimes developers don't come back and enforce them because, it is
Right.
what it is, so maybe we can just make sure that we have that on record as well,
Yeah.
Mayor, I think it's.
One thing I can compare it to is, friends and relatives that live in other cities that are very in sync, I guess you could say. They usually have HOAs involved, and they
Yes.
are the ones who are imposing certain looks, certain colors of the
Yeah.
stain of the wood, down to those kind of details. And so you drive through it, and I guess you could call it cookie cutter also. There's not a
Yeah.
lot of uniqueness to it, but everything is very in uniform and in sync. So I think that's maybe part of the intent was we were trying to make the city sort of be the HOA for the neighborhoods because we don't have that many HOAs. So I think that was where it was going, but it's been pretty there's been challenges, as Ms. Councilwoman Cruz has brought up. Just a couple of photos just to wrap things up. Here's a few from some of the new subdivisions where it is required. So again, they're required to do the front facing the street, the both sides, and rear at the time that the house is built. And another complaint that's come in is, for example, here, this home looks to be one of the first ones. You can't see really well, but there's not houses on either side of that. So they have to build all four. Then the next two that come beside them kind of get a free fence.
A free wall, yeah.
If they don't want their own, they're fine with, because they're obviously going to face the posts away. But if they're fine with that, they pretty much got a free whole strip of fence. So there's been complaints about that, like how is that fair? That I had to build all mine. This other guy only came in and built 3, and then the neighbor over there might get in between 2 who already built, and both of them are done for them. So there's all these different scenarios that, we hear the complaints come in. So we just wanted to share that with you. And again, we're ready to take direction from council on how you want to proceed.
Well, I think at this point, we can't make a decision on anything, but the direction would be what?
To give direction to the planning department to make changes and present them to council in the next meeting with a public hearing.
There we go. Yes. Can we
So
do
to
that?
bring a draft amendment to the ordinance? Is that what?
Yes, you could bring the draft, or like what you guys would feel is your finalized product, for approval, and then there could be discussion.
Yes.
And we would have that public hearing on that date, so if there's any revisions on the next time that y'all bring it up, we've already had the public hearing.
Very good. Got it.
Thank you so much for all your hard work, that I.
Yeah, so our concerns, just bring something that encompasses those issues.
And we need a motion for that.
These are all like the ones that have been impacted by the ordinance? Because it looks nice.
It does look nice, that's.
So, but I don't see a problem. I think it looks nice. I think that was the intent. If you want to change the facade, you want to do it to downtown, but then you don't want to do it in the residential.
No, we do,
You understand what
just.
I understand, but no.
The
it's
front and
like-
the back.
But then what's, I
That because
understand.
it's a corner house, so we understand because it belongs to the same owner, it's not sharing the fence. But what I meant is having the 4 sides when you're in the middle of houses.
No, I understand.
Yeah, so
So
you
you can have the facade in the front as if you're fenced in completely and you're enclosed without having that side one, and then you have the back.
let's say like in that picture, the top left.
I would feel like, honestly, I'm gonna sound bad by saying this, but I would feel like, what's the purpose of even having it? As a landowner, you have a back fence and you have you don't even have any privacy. What's the purpose of taking on that extra burden of a cost, then do away with it?
The problem is that, again,
You see
the
what I'm
cost,
saying? Because you're not gonna have any benefit from the fencing by not having the one in between.
No, I totally agree, but the thing is that it's the value is not there, so we are hurting our citizens in a way. We're trying to not hurt them and have them have a safety, but at the same time, if they cannot spend on the fence and they cannot pay for the fence, because they don't have money out of pocket, and the lending part does not fulfill that, money included on the loan, then it means that they cannot close on the house or move into the house because of a fence issue. So
Right.
it's creating a little bit of problem because they're putting the money from out of pocket, pretty much $5,000, $7,000.
You'd still be
It's a lot for our
required
community.
to put a wood fence in the back
And in the
on
front.
this, and on the sides too, right? Well, on that side,
Yes, the
in that
gates.
example.
Yeah. So everything on the front, you're going on the road and you see, on the street, and you see uniformity and that everything is, has its gates. And the back also, so if you have a couple of houses like that, you actually have your privacy, except that, you decide with the neighbor when to put the ones in the middle.
So they don't include the fencing in the loan package? They're not including the fencing in the loan package, why is that?
It's too costly for the builder and it's not appraising. It is, and it's been a problem for years. Landscaping as well. You can put the landscaping, we cannot add it all because it can cost, 10,000, and they're gonna put, they say by the time that we close, you might die. So I cannot add value.
Well, I think what we can do is go back and research a little more again on the other cities. You've heard our concerns, and then you bring a recommendation, and at that point, we'll vote. We'll take a vote on whatever we want to vote for or against.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So we do need a motion.
Yes, just for them to proceed to present something in the next meeting.
Yes.
With the public hearing.
I make a motion to bring action or a suggestion for next meeting
Okay. We have a motion by
regarding the fence.
Councilwoman Cruz and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Ramon. Discussion. All in favor? We have 3 in.
That's fine.
Okay, unanimous. Okay, thank you. 16, presentation, discussion and possible action on section 23-63, article 6. No, that's, wait, I'm messing up 9, right? Article 9, chapter 23, subdivisions of the City of Eagle Pass Code of Ordinances relating to easements.
Mayor,
Yes.
again, this, like item 15 is informational. The only direction I'll give is for the planning department to present something in the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mayor, Council, thank you. So some background on this item. There's, I'd say probably more to this one than the fences. The utility easements have been designed in many subdivisions in the rear. So you can see a lot of the existing subdivisions where you find electricity, water, possibly sewer, AT&T cable, phone, in the rear. The majority, a lot of them now, you're seeing the water and sewer in the front yard, front utilities, but there are areas in town where you can find some of those in the rear. Utility infrastructure, I mentioned, some of the options, some of the things that you may find in a rear utility easement. And they can, in some cases, even serve as storm drainage. The ordinance allows for utility easements to be enclosed if approved by planning, if planning department feels there's no conflicts by enclosing that easement. Some residents unfortunately enclose their easements without a permit or applying for that, so they, just do it over the weekend, and it's hard for us to see what happens sometimes in the backyards. Other issues, easements are sometimes left unkept. Sometimes you see very tall weeds, and it makes it, sometimes they're tall enough that you can't even get through some of these easements. Some residents are very fond of the easements or alleyways. They use them to sometimes take their vehicles to the back, or they're doing construction, they'll bring materials to that area. So some people do utilize them. Another comment I want to include here is, from the research we did, most cities do allow for the enclosing of easements with the conditions, which we also have, which are that there's a gate accessible for utility services to get to them at any time that's needed, and also that they bear all the risk and responsibility if any damage happens to the fencing in the utility easement. That property owner would have to fix it themselves and not the utility company who needed to get back there and do work on their infrastructure.
Mr. Mayor, if not mistaken, they have special locks, right, with certain code that all the utility companies know, and they're the same as per subdivision.
So I'm not too familiar on how they go about that. It seems like what's read is specifically just that the access is available to them, but how they go about it, I'm sure there's different ways.
Yeah, because some people are scared of having just the gate open or unlocked, because what if? And so what they do in other cities right now, they're putting a certain lock with a certain code, so it's all the utility companies actually know about that code and they can have access. In the event that it doesn't work, yes, they just break it and they go in as an emergency. But at least it's an option for the old neighborhoods that we have the easements on the back.
I already kind of explained it, but here's just a section specifically from ordinance. If you wanted any specific details, I can go into that further. But number 5, the one that's in larger font, explains that it can be applied for to enclose the easement, and if planning department determines there's no conflict, it can be approved. And then we have several photos just to give visuals of some of the types and the way that they look throughout town. Here's a couple of photos there. Sometimes you have very well kept, clean. Sometimes you see these cinder block fences. Sometimes you have the wooden fences. Then you get to some other ones where they're enclosed, so the easement is blocked. You can't access any further through there. Many of them do have gates. Which is possible to get through for a person, but a lot of times some utility companies have brought up a concern. If we need to get our equipment in there to do work, we can't get through some of these small gates. And then the other big thing is that even if allowed to enclose an easement, constructing permanent structures in that easement area is not allowed. Pretty much in any of the cities we compared to, that's a constant. And it makes sense. You don't want to cover over lines that are going through. But you can see, like in the middle, people, once they fence it, they kind of feel, well, it's mine. And you start seeing structures popping up.
Oh, man. In that middle one, is that a gazebo there?
Yeah, it looks pretty nice gazebo or palapa there.
Right.
A couple more photos. This is an example where sometimes the weeds can grow pretty high, and you really can't get through in some of these cases.
And again, and I'm sorry that I put you in this predicament, Mr. Maynard, but again, another concern of mine for years, it's been this. In the old right now, so that people understand, in the new subdivisions, it's pretty much mandatory to have them on the front, so we're not having any of these issues, which is great. But in the old days, us as realtors, we have to explain the truth to the owners, and it means that easement belongs to you, and it's deeded to you, it's your property, you just cannot build anything permanent, any cement, structures, anything on that easement because of, and a utility company can come and just break it completely because they need to dig, and that's it. I mean, that's the real story. But at the same time, if they don't give them access, that's another problem for the utility company. So it's been a constant fighting. Let's say that you fence in prior to your easement and your easement stays on the outside on the back, but you're in the middle of a big, long street. If your neighbors are not taking care of their piece of land on the back, how can you access and clean yours? Then you get fined, then you get the calls that there's a lot of animals and snakes and you have other problems. So what I'm trying to get with this, with Mr. Madera as well, and with you, council, is how can we start fixing these problems without putting in danger or not being facilitating the utility companies this. One suggestion that I did in the past was maybe, but then it costs the city more as well, and it's something that we're just discussing. If that piece of land gets donated to the city so that we take care of it, we don't have any problems, and we don't have the owners fighting over their piece of land that they don't have access or they're not enjoying that piece of land. That's an option with the old neighbors. The others are, okay, if the neighbors already fenced in all the way to the back, then allow everyone, to do the same so that they can enjoy those 5 feet by, it's a long, piece of land there. If you really actually do the measurements of, depending on the width of the land. So 55 divide by 5 and you still have a good piece of, backyard for your kids. So, it's just a matter that I guess it needs our attention because it's always been like that. You have maybe 2 houses that are respecting the easement and then another house that went all the way to the back, so you're already corner up. So it's just been, I guess, a deal for a long time, and people don't have access to the back as well.
Where does code enforcement play into this?
So it would be a violation for the overgrown weeds back there because technically it is your private property. But with, the staffing they have, with all the coverages of the city they need to do, and it's kind of, again, hard to see behind some of these alleys. You can usually see right at the closest ones from the street, but once you're the ones further down into the block, it's a little bit trickier to
And again, the
oversee it all.
concern is always, and you probably get a lot of calls as well, well, it's my land, I pay taxes over it, I don't enjoy it, and I have to clean it, but I don't have access to it, so how can I deal with it? So it's just a constant fight over that. So.
We do hear
just
those.
find a
We do
solution.
hear those. Unfortunately, so the process that I've implemented. Anytime somebody applies or asks for that permission to enclose, I send it to all the utility companies and ask, do you have any utilities in this easement? This person is applying. They would like to enclose. Do you have any? Would there be any conflicts with you? And generally, there's always at least one between water, electricity, phone cable, or gas that does have a conflict. Sometimes 1 or 2 say, you know what, that particular one's not going to impact me, but amongst the 5, almost every time they say no. And so we mostly are declining when people apply to do this, and then that puts us in a difficult predicament to explain it when they say, well, what about that one that is already enclosing it? Or what about my neighbor? He has his. And it's tricky. We do our best to explain to them, but it gets a little bit complicated.
This one is difficult, yeah.
That they have to respect the easement.
It
makes it easier. You know what I mean? But
it's one way or the other, but they always say.
For one and not the other. It's just.
I see too many legal issues with the deeding property.
No, and it's not, and I'm gonna just say it, like those pictures of those weeds, that's an issue, and I have a problem with it, because, I've known people that have gotten letters of, warning, if you wanna call it that, or from, code enforcement for grass that's this high. And you can't see that, no, I'm sorry, if you can't see that, then that's not the job that you should be doing. Because, look at the tree, it's taking over the whole area there. On both pictures.
And those are pictures from last week.
And you know what I'm saying? And I understand, like, a lot of the weeds came up with a lot of the rain and stuff like that, and, we have to be considerate. But this is not 2 weeks worth of stuff.
Right. So, anybody want to give any direction to Mr. Madera? Because this is just.
Well, again, a motion to discuss further on, and then when we're ready with a possibility of action, include it on the next meeting.
Is there a certain amendment you're looking for as far as that draft?
I think we're gonna have to meet with Waterworks. I was in talks with them to see their point of view as well.
So we can maybe table.
So maybe we can
let's table.
and then we can
Discuss.
give it direction so that we can actually include it as a maybe change of ordinance or. But thank you so much for your presentation.
So can I get a motion?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to table.
Motion to table by Councilwoman Cruz and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Ramon. Discussion. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Appreciate it. Executive session. 17, executive session pursuant to section 551.071 and 551.072 of chapter 551 Texas Government Code, consultation with attorney and deliberations about real property regarding possible donation agreement, public improvement district and tax increment reinvestment zone, and possible action in open session regarding same. Item 18, executive session pursuant to section 551.071 and 551.072 of chapter 551 Texas Government Code, consultation with attorney and deliberations about real property regarding possible acquisition of a property for animal shelter and possible action in open session regarding same. Also, in item 18, Councilwoman Cruz has recused herself.
Oh, yes.
So, just for the record. Item 19, executive session pursuant to section 551.071 and chapter 551.072 of chapter 551, Texas Government Code, consultation with attorney and deliberations about real property regarding possible acquisition for downtown plaza and possible action in open session regarding same. Item 20, executive session pursuant to section 551.071 and chapter 551, Texas Government Code, consultation with attorney and deliberations regarding loan application for INT 3R Mix Productions LLC and possible action in open session regarding same. Item 21, executive session pursuant to sections 551.074 and chapter 551.071 of chapter 551 Texas Government Code, discussion of personnel and consultation with attorney, hiring/selection process for city manager position, and possible action in open session regarding same. And we are also taking item number 11 into executive session.
Under section 551.
Under section 551.071,
That's it.
Texas Government Code, consultation with attorney. And with that said, we will go into executive session at 7:52 p.m.